Hello and welcome to the Paper Boys podcast. I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zack Nally.
We're reporters with the Carteret County News-Times. We are welcome via telephone because it would have been quite a journey for these folks to make it into the studio today. Mary McKnight, athletic director at Ocracoke High School, and Woody Willis, athletic director at Hatteras High School. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for having us.
So Zack and I just did our high school basketball preview podcast with the girls coaches and the boys coaches, and then we do a segment at the end where we kind of do our predictions for the year and players of the year and just talk about what the year is going to look like. And one of the things we noted was how cool it was that the county teams were playing you guys this year. Croatan girls just went to Cape Hatteras on this past Saturday, and Ocracoke boys will go to East Carteret this Saturday. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong on either one of those. And we said that's fantastic. We love that because we should feel like we should have you guys on the schedules here of the county schools every year and however many sports we can. We're not immediate family, but you are like our cousins to the east there, so definitely should be playing each other every year. And it's a shame when we don't and can't. And I recognize even as close as we are in proximity is still quite a haul.
I mean, it's a neighboring county, but it's a lot of travel.
And we thought, wow, it would be interesting to talk to the ADs at those schools because of the 430 schools, I think, in the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. If you guys aren't at 1 and 2 when it comes to ADs who have the most challenging and unique jobs in the state, you're definitely in the top 5.
Yeah.
So we said, let's talk to those guys and see what it's like being ADs at these schools. So let's get a little background information. Born and raised, and how you find yourself at your current schools. Mary, let's start with you.
Okay. I was born and raised in Greene County, Tennessee, which is in the northeast corner of Tennessee. I played sports my whole life. And then I ended up at Tennessee and started, I did 2 years of eligibility with the rowing team at Tennessee. And then I actually quit rowing, and then I ended up somehow on the lady ball soccer team for my 3rd year of eligibility. And then when I graduated from Tennessee in 2000, when was that? 8. I went to East Tennessee State for my master's in school counseling. And then when I completed that in 2011, I applied for the job at Ocracoke and somehow got that. So I've been at Ocracoke since about 2011, coached girls basketball, girls volleyball, co-ed soccer, just kind of a little bit of everything here at Ocracoke. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I ended up in the athletic director's position, so on top of school counseling. So here it's not a full-time position, so I'm actually the school counselor full-time, and then athletic director is like a stipend position.
So had you ever been to Ocracoke before?
No, not before I went for the interview. Yeah, so the principal at the time was from Southwest Virginia, which is close to Northeast Tennessee.
Sure,
and so when he called me to set up the interview, he knew exactly like how far I was going to be coming and all that stuff. And he said, "You might want to take a couple days. You're going to have to catch the ferry." And I was like, "What?" I was like, I was 24 years old, and I just didn't really know where I had applied to a few places, and I was looking to get kind of out of Tennessee and have a different scenery, maybe be on the coast a little bit. And so when I got that call, I was like Googling it as he's talking to me. So yeah, the very first time I ever went was for the interview.
What an moment that must have been. Like, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was kind of wild, and it was kind of crazy how it worked out. I had actually worked at Ocracoke School is a pre-K through 11 school or pre-K through 12 school, which is rare in itself. And I had worked at a K-12 school in Tennessee, so I had that experience that a lot of other people didn't have, and it just kind of worked out.
That's incredible, especially going from the mountains to the beach, and even people that come to our county. There's definitely some rural areas that you might think you're out there, but not like Ocracoke.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess I felt the same way. I felt like I'm from kind of the boonies of Tennessee, and I'm used to being around rural folk and rural places. But this is definitely its own kind of rural.
What was that first ferry trip like, Mary? Were you thinking, are we ever going to get there?
Yeah, I just kind of was like, what did I get myself into, which I still ask myself every day. So.
How about you, Woody? Give us your background.
So I am pretty much as close to local as you can get down here, I guess, to the island. I was born in Raleigh because my dad left the island to go work, but all of my family is from here, and I moved back here in third grade and went to elementary, high school, everything here on the island. Left to go to Chowan College at the time and played a year of soccer there, and then left there because I got married at 19 and ended up going to Elizabeth City State University in Elizabeth City and commuted 2.5 hours every other day to finish up college.
Wow.
While my wife was working here on the island as a kindergarten teacher. And then one semester or 2 semesters, I lived with the former sheriff of our county in Currituck and finished up all my classes that I needed for those last 2 semesters, and was away from my wife for, almost a year, other than coming back and forth for, weekends here and there. So finished up that, came back, got a job to teach in school that I graduated from. And then I was the assistant athletic director under Tim Sproul for 4 or 5 years. And then this is year 3 of being the athletic director here.
Having a background on the island, Woody, I would imagine a lot of folks, whether Ocracoke or Cape Hatteras, they fall into the same category of Carteret County kids. Zack and I being Carteret County kids, born and raised. You've got the group that says, get me the heck out of here as soon as possible, and I'm never coming back. And then you've got the group that says, I'm never leaving. This is paradise, and why would I want to live anywhere else? What category did you fall in, Woody?
Well, I was kind of one of those guys, whatever I'm supposed to do, I'll do. When my wife got her job here, I kind of knew this was where we were going to be. And honestly, after doing some student teaching in some other counties, my shadowing and stuff and observation hours in other schools, I knew how nice and how actually secluded the island actually was, and I knew I would much rather raise my kids here.
We'll get right into the reason we wanted to talk to you guys today. We'll start with you, Mary. What are some of the challenges and unique nature of being the athletic director at Ocracoke High School?
The number one challenge and unique part is the ferry. It dictates everything we do. It either allows us to go play games or have games, or it doesn't. Today we were actually supposed to be at Manamus Heat for middle school games, and that didn't happen. The winds are blowing, and the sound class ferries didn't run this morning. So it can't just be bad weather and you're driving in a bus in bad weather to get to a game. Like, you could still go if that was the case for the most part. Here, if it's bad weather, you're staying put, or the other team's not going to be able to make it in. So that's one of our most unique challenges. The other thing is for sports, Ocracoke Village is very small. It's only a couple square miles altogether. So our campus has one basketball gym, and there's not another gym on the island. So when you have 2 middle school teams, a JV team, and 2 varsity teams, you got 5 teams that need to get in practices between the hours of 3 and 9:30 at night in one gym. If the gym is having work done, you don't have another place to send them to. A church gym, a rec gym, none of those other things exist. It's the same with our outdoor sports. We have one baseball field that we use in the fall for soccer when we can have enough kids to play soccer. So that leads to another unique challenge, that in the grades 9 through 12, we only have 45 students. So trying to field bigger sports like soccer is super difficult to create like consistent seasons where we have numbers back to back to back to have teams, because you don't want to run a team with just 11 kids. You know, you want subs, and you need subs for injuries or behavior or academics, you know, sickness, illness. So we try to always have like 13, 15 commitments, and that's really hard to pull out of 45 students, especially if you're running another sport at the same time, like volleyball. So those are both fall sports. Volleyball pulls all the girls, then you're trying to get, you know, 90% of the boys to commit to playing soccer to try to have a team. So we struggle with numbers. We struggle to provide those different opportunities for kids. We wish we had more sports and more opportunities, but we it's just really tough if we have a sign-up sheet for something like soccer and we get 9 or 10 kids. I mean, that's a good amount, but it's just not enough. And we don't; those kids don't get to play. So I mean, there's a lot of unique. The ferry's probably number one. The field situation, like the field's doesn't even belong to the school; it belongs to the Ocracoke Youth Center. So we have to share it with youth sports. So elementary, during baseball season, they actually get priority to run their youth league out at the field over varsity baseball. And so everything's limited. Everything is shared, which is great as a community, but it does offer its challenges as athletic director.
Well, Woody, can you just follow up with ditto? It's pretty much the same thing over at Hatteras.
Yeah, I mean, so for us, it's very simple. We don't deal with the ferries. We obviously, Mary and I are in the same boat of the tides are a huge thing for us. Water is always washing through a road or somewhere, it feels like constantly. I'm sure Highway 12 on Ocracoke today is probably getting a little water, possibly on the south end. And so it's one of those things where for today we are supposed to play at home, but the team couldn't come and play a middle school game due to the possibility of 60-mile-an-hour gust out here today. And so the only thing it really hurts our kids, you know. They don't get to play every game like we wish they could. And it's hard, honestly, on my end of it too, for finding coaches sometimes. We are a very small people. I mean, we have a good number of students. Like, we are 6 through 12. I think we're in the 350 with 6 through 12. So we're about 200 in the high school. But teachers are pretty run down, having so many different positions that they're filling. And so finding coaches is a little difficult.
So
yeah, I would agree with that.
So, Mary, you said you have 45 students in the high school at Ocracoke?
Right, 9 through 12, yeah.
And what do you have, 200?
Yeah, so
wow.
we're bigger than we're 60 miles almost, or 50 miles of a strip or a sandbar.
For sure at this point. Well, and you brought up the Go ahead, Woody.
Yeah, we're about 50 miles of a sandbar, and with that, I mean, we have a lot more. I'm going to use the term. I don't know what other term to use, but we have a lot more implants of people who are coming in from other places. So our numbers are rising because of that, and our numbers went up a whole lot during COVID. Because a lot of these people who working big business found out, hey, there's a place I would love to raise my kid in Hatteras, and I think even Ocracoke saw some of this, that I can raise my kid where I don't have to deal with the outside world, the same things that are going on out there. And they can have the experience of still like a small town world, and I get to work from home. So a lot of these people started moving in during COVID.
Yeah,
so,
one of the questions I was curious, I wanted to ask you both about was transfers. Do you typically have more coming in? Do you typically have more going out at least compared to like inland schools? I guess you just answered that question. You all have had a lot coming in lately, huh?
We have. I don't know about Mary. I mean, ours has been on the rise like I said, since COVID. I'm kind of secluded in my office from the rest of the school. I'm surrounded by the gym area, which is every PE and health person's dream. There's kids that, even as being only 200, when I first started working here about 16 years ago, I probably knew every kid in the building. And now there's a few here and there that I'll see walking down the hall and I'm like, I don't remember seeing that kid. And it's more than likely they're new this year. Mm. And so, it has grown for like last 2-3 years. We've probably bumped up 20 or so kids or more. So I feel like that's a decent influx of students for us.
Yeah, and we've got a little bit of history of that ourselves. Obviously, we being a military area, we've got a lot of transfers that come in and come out at our schools.
Especially Croatan.
And you mentioned the COVID thing, and that's also a trend. Anywhere scenic to live where you could work from home, these communities are seeing that drive. I want to take it back real quick to the transportation part, because I got to imagine that is, numbers are a huge challenge, I'm sure. But you mentioned the ferry, Mary. Are you all strictly taking 12 out to the mainland? Do you ever come the Cedar Island way? I can't imagine. I mean, even if you came all the way to Carteret County, where would you, unless you're playing a Carteret County team, maybe a Pamlico, but that's probably faster to go the northern route anyway. Is that when you say the ferry, are you strictly talking about the Ocracoke Hatteras ferry?
No, we use all of them. Wow. We, like this Saturday when we go to East Carteret,
sure.
We definitely, we asked if we could do a Saturday specifically, so that way they wouldn't miss a whole day of school, because that's what it would take to do that on a school day. And so Daniel Griffey at East Carteret was, gracious enough to put us on a Saturday, and then we picked the time on where we can ride a Cedar Island ferry over, play a game, and then ride the Cedar Island ferry back. And it's not a whole lot of driving. It's still a lot of time traveling time, but it's not a whole lot of driving. But if we get Southside for a game, we go through Cedar Island. If we go last year, where did we end up? Did we end up at Pamlico? We've been to Pamlico a couple times. We've been to Croatan a couple times in the past decade. But we use Swan Quarter a lot too. Swan Quarter takes us to Mattamesquite, which is in our conference, so we use that a lot for Mattamesquite games. Hobgood is in our conference, and Hobgood is past Plymouth. It's like I drove the bus for Hobgood, and I clocked 19 hours on the day I drove for Hobgood.
Wow.
So we use the Swan Quarter ferry when we can, because you can park the bus and the kids can get off the bus, kind of move their legs. There's tables within the ferry. They can do homework. Our kids are really good with time management skills now, because they're missing so much school that we require them to kind of, you gotta sit down and do some work while we're on this ferry. So the Swan Quarters ferry is very nice for that reason, that we can kind of spread out and they can move their legs and stuff. If you take the Hatteras ferry, you're kind of stuck on the bus for the entire trip. So the timing is pretty similar if you're trying to go to certain places, like if we're trying to go to, let's say Columbia, Beargrass, or Hobgood. Either way, you're spending the same amount of time, but how you're spending that time is different. So are you up and moving around, or are you stuck in a seat? And that's two different things.
But that is no joke for those listening who may not know. The ferry ride to Cedar Island is about 2.5 hours, something like that.
Yeah, Cedar Island, is about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and then Swan Quarter can be up to 3 hours depending on weather and stuff. But now when I first moved to the island, the Hatteras ferry was only 30 minutes, and now it's up to an hour and 15 minutes due to Woody, help me out here. I'm going blank.
The channel. I was going to say channel.
The channel.
Yeah. The channel.
Dredging.
Lack of.
Right. So it's changed a lot in the past. So that's another thing with Ocracoke athletic history is when the ferry was 30 minutes, we actually were a part of a conference of 10 schools, all the way up to Perquimans, Gates, Camden. All those schools were in our conference. It was all 1A, and it was super competitive. and then the ferry changed, and it was longer after some big storm, and then it just really changed the whole dynamics of the conference, and we ended up kind of coming back into the Atlantic 5, which is now the Atlantic 6. But it definitely affects not just us, but the schools that are in our conference, and then, of course, required to kind of give us a game at home, just like we're required to give them a game at home.
How often are Saturday games a thing, Woody?
For us, Mary plays way more Saturday games than we do.
Okay.
Just because for us, so our biggest thing is getting people to come here. Outside of conference-wise, and especially for middle school, and I'm sure Mary has the same issue with this. Middle school, people don't want to travel here, especially when you're talking a 3-hour bus ride. And so it's really hard for us to get games outside of our conference for people to come here. Luckily for us, inside of our county, we have First Flight, and we also have Manio, and they're super gracious every year to help us out with middle school, giving us a game here and there, and also for high school. So that kind of stuff helps with that. But just in the same with Mary, I mean, our kids are on buses constantly. I mean, we are all the time in, traveling, and like she said, kids have gotten really good at doing the right thing with schoolwork and stuff like that. Cool story. I don't know if you were here, Mary, yet for this one. When I first came in, we were supposed to play Ocracoke, and I think the ferries were shut down. And like you guys over in Croatan area and stuff like that, we do have a small number. We still have a Coast Guard base, and so we have a small number of Coast Guard guys here on the island, and that has bumped up a little bit more than what it was in the past. But they actually took our kids over on the cutters so that the kids could play their game and brought them back.
Wow.
And so, that's kind of one of those things, like, only in Hatteras or Ocracoke would you probably ever have a story like that to tell your kids or,
Well, one of the questions I had was, tell me a story that can only happen with your program. Woody's already taken care of that.
Yeah, that's like some Dunkirk stuff right there.
I think that might be the one.
Yeah, the north end of Ocracoke Highway 12 washes out pretty frequently with tides and all that stuff, and then it takes, even if the weather kind of calms down and the water goes back, the road needs a lot of repair. And so I know that they had to do like 4-wheel drive because you can drive on the beach here. So they just went around the road, like a convoy of parents went around the road, got on the beach, and then got to the ferry around. They just went on the beach and drove around it to get the kids to a game, get them to a ferry.
Woody, give me the schools that you have traveled farthest to play and that have traveled the farthest to come to play you.
So conference-wise, it's the same as Mary. Hobgood's a good long ride. It's about 4 hours on a bus to get to Hobgood. It's literally, it intersects, if you take Williamston and Tarboro and just draw a line and go kind of northeast, northwest from each one of those, you will literally like almost intersect into Hobgood, and it's pretty close to a 4-hour bus ride for our kids.
Wow. Yeah, that's up there by Scotland.
Coming
Neck, right?
here, one of my years, we went to East Wake Academy for a regular season game.
Wow.
Yeah, that felt like it took a day. I know it didn't, but it really felt like it was a solid day long.
No doubt.
We used to. I don't know if you were here for this or not either, Mary. But when the bridge went out on the north end of it,
oh yeah,
we were having to take a ferry that took us to Stumpy Point from Rodanthe. And that was a 4-hour ferry ride. And then we were playing on Saturdays. That's the only time we could play games were on Saturdays. And So it was literally we would get up at 5, catch the very first ferry to go out, take the ferry, go play soccer, football, whatever the sport was we were playing at the time. And then game would be over, go eat something, lunch, dinner, whatever it was, and then another 4-hour ferry ride back. And so, I mean, you spent 8 hours just on the ferry alone, not including on whatever team you're traveling to from Stumpy Point that day. So,
well,
it's an interesting world we live in now.
Well, let me ask you this.
Most people don't know.
Because there are athletic directors out there who are listening to this right now, who are suddenly seeing their problems in a much different light. We talked about at the beginning that the unique challenges that you face, but I mean they're truly wildly challenging. Is there a certain point, you both have been doing this for over a decade, is there a certain point where you don't really see it anymore? Like you don't really realize the kind of challenges that you're facing, or is it still just as daunting as it was when you first started?
Is it just your life?
Yeah, you just come to accept it. This is what it is.
Yeah, it's gotten easier. I mean, any job has got its speed bumps at the start just to get used to things, and so my phone notifies me every morning whether ferries are running that morning or not. That's just a part of my morning wake up. I've got a lot of athletic directors like on speed dial, and we talk a lot. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not that I don't see it. I think it's become easier to manage, and I'm less hesitant about making decisions about travel and things like that, or about whatever the complication is. Or I've just become, I think, more confident in those decisions, and also at the end of the day, like safety is number one. And so if you keep that in your head, like the decisions kind of come a little easier. You never want to put any students or staff or faculty in jeopardy. So as long as that's at the forefront, it usually makes your decision pretty easy. But no, I mean, yeah, I see it. I think it's just gotten easier to manage.
And Woody, for you, I guess, having some background there, you've known different, but you don't know any different, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because for me, it's one of those things where it's not so. I mean, it's just like, hey, it's another day living in Hatteras for me. That's kind of like today. When I tell the middle school kids, like, hey, no one's coming today because of weather. I'm like, we live in paradise, but we're obviously going to have some challenges. So, the hardest part is helping coaches who are not from here, their first year, understand. For real, like the water's flooding through the road, so you're not going to be able to travel today. That's a for real statement we're making, and so, right now I'm pretty surrounded by coaches that have been here for a while, so it's pretty smooth. Actually, my assistant coach I taught in high school or middle school, so the full circle's coming around. But once about a year in, those guys start to figure out, oh yeah, this is just the life we live.
That's a good point you bring up, Woody. I was going to and ask that. What kind of turnover do y'all have coaching and teaching wise, more than a regular school, or y'all stay pretty stable?
Well, so it depends. Some people will come and they'll be later in life, like they're getting close to retirement, and they will tend to last. The AD before me came and was only planning on being here for like a couple years and ended up spending 10 years, and now it's we're neighbors. And, he did 11 years here after 31 years in Virginia. And so, the younger group of people who come, that's where our turnover happens more, due to the fact you're leaving the college life where, even a smaller city of Greenville, there's so much happening. And then you come down here, and if you ever come here in the winter, I mean, Mary will tell you, when you're driving a bus, January at night, you can literally go 50 miles and not see a vehicle. At 10 o'clock at night. Like, you can drive almost from Rodanthe to the ferry dock and only see like one or two cars the whole ride back, and you're like, it's a ghost town.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, even in the summertime here, like our business is shut down at like 9:30, and
Right.
people were like, well, what can we do? I'm like, you got a massive cottage, have fun. I don't know.
How about you, Mary, as far as turnover with coaches and teachers?
Yeah, we have quite a bit. We've had some long-standing coaches, and I say long-standing, it'd probably be like 10 years. Is probably we had a coach from baseball just retire after 12. So we've had a few stay around for quite a bit, but I think typically, I don't know, 3 to 4 years, and then they kind of move on. Or we have we have several coaches that coach because their kids playing, and then when their kids done, they kind of are done too.
Uh-huh.
And that's and that is. I like having parents as coaches. They're very invested, but it just it is what it is that we got right now. We've got a really great group of coaches, and so I can't complain. We always seem to find a way to make it work, and to have a coach. That's always key. Like, might be a week or two before practices start, but somehow we figure it out and we find somebody to coach. I think one of the biggest things is we do struggle, like Hyde County. So Woody and I are part of two different counties. Woody's part of Dare County, and then Ocracoke is actually part of Hyde County. So Hyde County is one of the poorest counties in the state in general, and then Dare County is one of the richest counties in the state. So we don't have a lot. There's a big discrepancy in like our budgets for athletics and things like that, and we don't have a whole lot to spend on coaches, and so that's I think that's definitely one of the reasons it's hard when they're spending 19 hours to go play a game away from their families and things like that, and then we struggle to pay them for that kind of time. So the coaches that we have are just super into it for the right reasons, because they can't be into it for money. I'll tell you that much. So,
Woody, you wanted to chime in there?
Yeah, I mean, she's right. I mean, it is a crazy discrepancy of the difference in I mean, literally, me and Mary are only separated by 14 miles.
as a crow flies, yeah.
It takes us literally an hour and 15 or hour and 30 minutes to get to each other, but we're 14 miles from each other. But I mean, I tell our kids constantly, we are, I think, the fourth or fifth richest county in the state because of our tourist industry. And, it is a way bigger thing for us. Luckily for Mary, that they're pretty supported being able to travel.
Yes.
And for us, we do travel a lot because our county will allow us. And so that helps out a lot for us. But, even for what our coach is getting paid, I mean, if you do the math after you've been on a bus, like she said, ours is more or less like 15 to 16 hours instead of 19. But after that many hours and paying for who knows how many kids' food, because believe it or not, with all these massively big houses, none of us live in those.
Right.
We all live in just your everyday normal trailers, or some of us have decent houses, but overall the poverty level here is pretty high on this island, and that's
right.
the part people don't catch.
Right.
I basically, my check some days for coaching basketball will go into paying for kids' food and different things, and doing whatever I can to help students that are not as lucky as my personal kids are, So, it is a struggle. But even for what we get paid, it's hard, like she said, to find people that are willing to put 16 hours on a bus for a middle school assistant. It's not easy. But
yeah, and try finding a bus driver that's willing to put in 19 hours and get paid a bus driver fee too.
Right.
So.
No, you're right. Being a high school or middle school coach is already especially when you're a teacher as well, is already an extreme time commitment. But what you're asking some of these to do is is even greater. And real quick on the economics part of it, fun fact: Dare County has a higher average salary than Carteret County as well.
Nice.
So, but that's that ad valorem, that coastal property, property taxes right there.
Uh-huh.
So it's a really interesting county too, and how they've economically gone. But real quick, back to the sports of it. I'm curious, when you live way far out there on an island like that, do you have rivalries like the way that some of these high schools who are 5 miles apart or right down the street? I mean, I imagine that the two of you all know each other quite well school wise, but beyond that, do you have a lot of experience with that with your schools?
I would say there's quite a rivalry.
I'm assuming you are each other's biggest rivals.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Definitely for Ocracoke Hatteras is the biggest rival.
Yeah.
Is it a pretty even rivalry?
In some sports,
depends on the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's your second biggest rival, Mary?
Matamesquite.
Okay. How about you, Woody?
Well, I don't know. There's also Beargrass, but Matamesquite and Hatteras have forever been in Ocracoke's conference, or even when we weren't in NCHS, they still played. So that's the longest standing, competition for Ocracoke in general. But then schools like Beargrass have been in and out of our conference, whether we go in and out of theirs or they go in and out of ours. And so there's a lot of competition and rivalry with Beargrass as well. But the two teams that have consistently been on Ocracoke's schedules have been Matamesquite and Hatteras.
How about you, Woody?
Yeah, I would say, outside of Ocracoke, I would probably say Beargrass or, like she said, Matamesquite has been there through the thick and thin with us, Columbia. But I would probably tend to say Beargrass since I've been AD and assistant AD. Beargrass has probably been the second in our world.
We earlier when we were talking about Saturday games, Mary, do you have more Saturday games than Woody?
It sounds like it. Yeah, we just stay open to it. If another team is willing to host us on Saturdays, it helps us not miss school, and our families and our kids are kind of we're on the island anyways. There's not a whole lot of people who are like going away for the weekend or things like that. And our families use opportunities to go watch their kids play basketball to also like grocery shop and right now Christmas shop and do things like that. They get an hour, they get to the town an hour before the game and they're able to go do some shopping or do something like that. Our families kind of take advantage of that. And then if I can get enough staff together to do ticket sales and concessions and things like that, then I'm happy to host Saturday games as well, because I'm not doing much else. I'll take a Saturday game over missing a whole lot of school pretty much any day. It doesn't bother me at all.
What sports do you offer at Cape Hatteras, Woody?
So in the fall we have boys soccer, volleyball, and then we have cross country for high school, and then we have co-ed soccer for middle school in the fall, and then also middle school volleyball. Winter we have boys and girls basketball for both middle and high, and then JV for high school. And then in the spring, we offer cheerleading we have in the winter as well. Since we don't have football, we don't have fall cheerleading, but we do have winter cheerleading.
No,
and then
go ahead.
Then in the spring, we have baseball, softball for both middle and high, and then we do have girls soccer in the spring as well, with a limited track team. We don't have a full team, but we do have track runners, even though we don't have a track. So
wow.
Yeah, you're talking about something else that's very interesting. That one's really, really hard to do, but I was
finding a stretch of asphalt somewhere. Go.
You think outside the box and get creative in these places.
Yeah.
We host. Typically, we host for cross country here, and Probably, I mean, this year was a little different because if you don't know, the lighthouse is being worked on and restored, so they've stripped the stripes off of it and done all this, and it's literally just a red brick lighthouse right now. But normally for cross country, we host the conference meet, and it literally you're finishing right behind the lighthouse and on the beach, and I mean, you know, it's not very many conferences where you're like you can hear the ocean rumbling while you're finishing up your cross country meet. So it's you know, it's kind of a cool place.
And Mary, you have the same exact sports?
We don't have football as well. Soccer is kind of fluctuates. We have it when we can have enough numbers. And we use the outfield of the community centers or the youth centers baseball field for soccer. And then we don't have cheerleading, and we don't have, so our baseball field has a natural mound, and so we're unable to play softball on that. So we don't have softball right now. We can only have baseball, but it's open to girls. It's co-ed if any girls want to play, and we don't have girls soccer. When we do have soccer in the fall, it's open to girls and boys. So
do girls play on the baseball team?
We haven't. It's been about 3 years since we've had a girl on the baseball team, but and the last one we had just was right in there, and she was she was a starter and one of our top players.
Wow.
I love that.
And so neither one of you have wrestling?
No.
Well, I thought about it. I'm really, because I had the same question. We both looked at each other and said no wrestling, but I'm realizing too, gym space for competitions is probably a massive.
I think that's our main thing. It would be space and gym space.
Where would you put it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Also ironic that Ocracoke High School and Cape Hatteras High School don't have swimming teams.
True. Well.
Right. Yeah, we probably should be doing like sailing teams, surfing teams, swimming teams. We should be doing that kind of
sand
stuff.
Sand volleyball?
Yeah, beach volleyball.
There you go.
We're actually in the process of putting 2 sand volleyball or beach volleyball courts out on our baseball field area, like just behind the fence. So
where sand is aplenty. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, as crazy it is we're having to get the sand delivered in because you can't
pull it from where we have it. Yeah,
some beach nourishment.
Yeah,
right. And you don't want to take any of that beach.
Well, we've had the same thing here, though. I mean, in our county, East Carteret didn't have swimming until about 15 years ago. And you think Beaufort, of course, all Carteret County teams are going to have swimming, but
we just got our first dive team.
It's tough to find a place.
Well,
to do
again,
it.
Facilities, right?
Yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
don't have a place.
Yeah, and we don't have any public swimming pools here. I mean, they all belong to either private homes or the hotels and motels. So a lot of our kids, even living. They're surrounded by water, and a lot of them don't even learn how to swim until later in life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Woody.
It's crazy. You would not believe the number of people on this island that can't swim.
That is wild.
That is crazy.
I have my aunt's almost 70, and my granddad was a commercial fisherman. We lived on boats all the time, and my aunt can't swim. Wow. Like, craziest thing in the world. Like, could probably save herself-ish, but, like, actually functionally swimming can't do it.
But I did, I learned to swim in a YMCA, and the closest YMCA is what Nags Head.
Oh wow!
It's an hour and almost hour and a half for me.
Yeah, at least an hour and a half. Yeah,
2.5.
That's for you. Yeah, it's another 2. It's 2.5 for me.
Oh,
well, it's kind of the same thing here. We have a local gym sports club that is emphasizing trying to bring in students from the schools to learn how to swim because there are quite a lot of people here that just don't know how to do it, despite living by the ocean. And because we don't have a ton of these, we have, I think two public pools in this county that are not. I guess no, neither of them are public.
Well, we don't have a public school in this county.
Gosh, you're
public
right.
Pool in this county.
It's still like a part of a gym, but even still, like to have the ability to say, okay, I want to sign up for this gym and have a pool. I don't think they have that.
And the closest YMCA to us is New Bern, I think.
Yeah. Right. But you're right. People that grow up next to the water don't always know how to swim. That's fascinating.
Well, every school is known for a sport that typically, might have a dip here or there, but almost annually is really good. Woody, what is the sport at Cape Hatteras that you all can hang your hat on? Most years we're going to be pretty decent.
I would say right now in the last, 3 years since I've been here as athletic director. I've been here for 16, but teaching. But would say for the last 3, on the boys' side of things, it's going to be soccer. And then on the girls' side of it, I would say probably volleyball. Our girls' volleyball team has been going at least 2 to 3 rounds deep the last couple years, I would say.
It's pretty good.
Boys soccer has been going at least 2 for the most part. And, we're running into the charter school and the, other school world there that kind of makes it a little harder to go deeper in there.
Yeah, we know all about that in Carteret County.
Yeah.
How about you, Mary? What's y'all sports?
Basketball is definitely the most central sport. Our community really rallies around it, and in the wintertime when there's no businesses open, the thing to do is come out, watch basketball games, and eat concession stand food. So it's kind of where the whole community's heart lies, is in basketball.
That makes sense. You just described the 2 sports where there's only 5 or 6 kids on the court.
Right? Yeah, we're consistently pretty much able to put a team together.
That makes
there
a lot
have
of
been
sense.
times when there's only 5 or 6 kids on the team, but
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah,
That's all you need, right? Just one to sub out. That's it.
that's right.
And I'm just out of curiosity. You mentioned sometimes games don't get played. Does that ever play a role in playoff? How you get sorted into the playoffs?
It's always kind of like anxiety at the end of seasons, trying to like do makeup games. Priority definitely is conference. We always make sure that if
Gotcha.
we're rescheduling games, that we're only rescheduling conference. If we cancel a non-conference game, it's likely not getting rescheduled. But the other schools in the conference need that play just as much as we do, so we usually figure out a way to make it happen. It does get a little, especially with basketball, you get a 4-game max in a week, and we've definitely we've maxed it out. And it's a lot on our kids to do rescheduling, especially at the end of a season when they're gearing up for postseason play. You don't want to wear them out, but sometimes it just has to happen.
You guys were talking about some non-conference earlier. I guess, Woody, we hear a lot in Carteret County. It's tough to get teams to come play in Beaufort, Morehead City, Ocean, because as we say here, we're at the end of the world. I would imagine the AD's job of trying to find non-conference opponents every year is tenfold at Cape Hatteras and Ocracoke.
Yeah, my assistant athletic director, he loves scheduling. I've never really met many people who enjoy it, so he's big into it, and he helps out a lot with that. And he literally will email or text or call anybody within like a 200, 300-mile radius and being like, hey, we need games, and I will do the same, trying to find whoever we can. And for like middle school, there's a new kind of charter school popping up down in Crussville, North Carolina. And, finding places, people like that to play for our middle school. It's very interesting. A lot of schools for middle school, we go and play at their place. They have absolutely no problem with us coming to them, but a lot of schools now, I don't know for Mary, but for us, we've started to try to get on a rotation for high school, where we will go to them one year, they'll come to us the next. That tends to help a little bit, instead of playing 2 games in 1 year, just flip-flopping each year and traveling.
Yeah, Mary, I would imagine every year when it comes to this non-conference scheduling, you get up with some teams, and you're always the hope is to do a home and away. I'm sure there's lots of schools that are more than happy to do the home, but they're not too excited about the away part, right?
Right. Yeah. And there's some schools who have come over and they're like, man, we had a kid who we didn't realize was like terrified of being on that boat. So, there's some legit, if they've got students that have never been on water like that, there is some legitimacy to that kind of travel. And then sometimes the ferries are running, but it's not a fun ride. They're rocky and it's rolling and it's not, it doesn't feel good in your stomach. So there's always that too, where you're putting people in positions that they've never been in before. But it's also, a lot of them really like it just because it's a new experience for their kids. Sometimes they take kids out to the beach before or after the games, and sometimes it's the kids' first time seeing the beach and being on a beach. So a lot of schools, it all depends on the mentality, but we've had pretty good experiences with schools that come out, and then if we schedule a Friday or Saturday game, some schools kind of make a weekend of it, and they either go play Cape Hatteras the next day, or they stay the night and they kind of experience the island if they have those kinds of funds. So we've seen all kinds of things. The time that it's most hesitant is usually like state playoffs, and at some school like poor West Columbus had to come to us.
Oh, wow.
West Columbus had to come to us last year, and you get like 24 hours notice for a state playoff game of basketball that you've got to go to Ocracoke. And they called me, and they're like, "What do we, they're just kind of like,
what do we do?
Like, what do I do?
How do we get there?"
So those are the kinds of where like they're kind of forced to come to us, and it's got to be a little bit scary for them, and we try to put them into ease as much as possible. But at the same time, we end up doing that travel all the time. So we're like, hey, we do it. I promise you can do it too.
Well, I'd be surprised if you all didn't get. I'm surprised y'all don't get more like snowbird opponents. Like we have a couple of those here in this county where we'll get a team from Pennsylvania or something like a softball team.
Spring break.
Yeah, they'll come in for like they don't even start softball there till like April.
Right.
But they'll come down here and have a little,
a week,
an exhibition game and a little bit, weekend kind of a team, chemistry or whatever. And do y'all ever have anything like that where people want to come just to be in paradise?
We haven't been asked for anything like that, but we'd definitely be open to it. That's just baseball.
Y'all come here, please.
What you were talking about?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Once or twice, I have teams that'll ask, but it's funny because there'll be a Nag's Head,
right?
And I know probably for you guys the same kind of deal. People come in and be like, "Yeah, I've been to the Outer Banks." I'm like, I don't think you've been to where we're at. Like, you might have been to Nag's Head or like Corolla or something. You ain't been to Hatteras. And,
you might want to give First Flight a call. Maybe they're before.
They'll be like, "Hey, we want to play with you. We want to play a game with you guys." I'm like, "All right, cool. Where you at?" And they're like, "We're staying in Duck." I'm like, "That's almost 2 hours, man." I'm like,
"Holy cow!"
Hey, we can try, and they're like, "Oh, never mind. We thought you guys were in the Outer Banks." I was like, "We are. We're the end of it.
We're the outer Banks, right?"
Yeah.
What do you mentioned? Some of your teams making nice runs there the last few years. Well, at your time there, what do you would say? What would be number one on the list of the biggest win in program history?
I would say maybe this year's soccer. I think either way, we won the first round game. We literally only have typically 15 kids on the soccer team, so you're looking over four kids on the bench. Some years we'll have 18 or 19, and then you have eight kids sitting there that's never even played with a soccer ball. And they're like, "Oh, it'll be fun to go hang out with my friends." And so, it can be all kinds of up and downs with that. But I think this year we went to the second round and we competed. And the first round game, super close. Really good game to watch. And we pulled it off. Played a team that was way, way more athletic than we were, but the actual fundamentals of soccer, we played so well and actually pulled off the win.
Nice.
So,
how about you, Mary? What's the biggest win since you've been there?
Both of our boys and girls teams have, in the past couple of years, have had good runs with this basketball state playoffs. Our girls got to host 2 home games the first round, 1 and 2 rounds back in 2022. I want to say. And then our boys just did it 2 years ago. They got to host 2 home state playoff games where, like, I think Jones Sr. came out to us, and then maybe that was the West Columbus. I can't remember now. They're all kind of like getting mixed together. And then our baseball team actually just last year got to host a first-round state playoff game for the first time, and that was super exciting.
Oh, wow.
We didn't have to travel, and Southside came out to our field, and it was really, really nice to host that first-round playoff game, and that was really cool. It was a great game, really good, close game. So
I'm sure I'll get the year wrong, but I want to say it was like 17. But I remember the Ocracoke girls came over here and beat East Carteret in the first round of the basketball playoffs, and I remember that coach.
Yeah.
I remember the coach just beaming.
Yeah, yeah. We've had, so, you know, and that's the thing about our sports is we'll have a good group and a strong group, and then, you know, they graduate. We have or they move or whatever, and then it goes. We'll go for like 5 or 6 years without, you know, even like breaking in the top 4 of our conference. And then all of a sudden it'll kind of swing back around, and we'll have another strong couple years. So it does, you know, just kind of with such limited selection when it comes to actual like student athletes, you know, you're just going to have this ebb and flow of athletes and those that can really put together a run. So.
Mary, we've added a few sports here the last few years with the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. We've had boys lacrosse, we've had girls lacrosse. There's the talk of the next few years. Feels like there's this massive push for girls flag football. Boys volleyball might be a thing. Are you all pretty maxed out when it comes to sports? Will you ever be able to add another one, you think?
You know, I'm not sure. I think we have boys volleyball is interesting to me because, again, that's only 6. I think we could maybe, and it all depends on like what season it would fall under.
Yeah.
And if it was at the same time as girls volleyball, that'd be kind of great. Just like girls and boys basketball, they could travel together, go play games together, and it kind of just all be done at the same time. That'd be really nice. But no, and the other thing is, you know, is we might need to trade out one sport for another. Like, we keep trying for soccer, but maybe trying to field 13, 15 kids for a soccer team is just not going to be a consistent thing for us. That if we can pick a sport that we're more consistently able to field, it might be a better fit for us. You know, so I think we're open to any of it, and we kind of go where the kids lead us. You know, if they're interested and they want to commit, and we've got coaches that want to commit, then I'd be all for any of it. Anytime the kids are moving their bodies and learning the skills that sports teach them, I'm for it.
How about you, Woody?
It would depend on the season in which it fell in. Because for us right now, we tend to struggle a little bit when we have 2 sports in the same season. Like, for instance, in spring, having softball and girls soccer, it tends to create a very it's close to each year which team is going to survive or if both will, and it fluctuates. One year you may have, like last year, I think we had almost 20 kids on the girls soccer team, and you know, like 15 on the softball team. So softball was kind of getting close to that cut, you know. And then other years, girls soccer is looking at 13 kids, and you know, softball are dealing with almost having to make cuts. And so it really will depend on that. I know when we had football here and we were playing boys soccer in the same time, as you can kind of, from right now, we still have boys soccer, so football kind of fell to the wayside because it just, we couldn't keep up with both, because both require a big number of students.
Yeah. When's the last time y'all had football?
I think 2016, 17, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And so, but it just kind of fizzled out.
Not to bring up bad memories, but when you live in Ocracoke and Hatteras, it comes with the territory. Mary, tell us about what it was like being a teacher, or a counselor, an AD, and just a person living in Ocracoke when Dorian came through, and what that next year and year and a half, 2 years was like.
Yeah, that's maybe the hardest time of my life so far. we had Dorian was this kind of incredible storm that affected pretty much only Ocracoke, of the continental U.S. And we lost our school, so we were displaced from our school for 4 years until they were able to rebuild what we have now. We had 60% homelessness of our staff that lost their homes. We had 50% of our students lost their homes. So at the time, it was just a lot of chaos, and nobody really knew where they were or like where anybody was living or anybody was staying. When typically you know exactly where a student is. If they sleep in, you can go knock on their door and pull them out of bed. So it was a lot. So we lost our gym. It went down to its concrete pad. We didn't have electricity, so we were trying to run practices. We ran a generator to run lights, and they just played on the concrete floor, which of course was a different deficit with the goals. We had to lower the goals and try and figure out where the 10 feet was and there were no lines on the court. So the kids learned how to refuel a generator and keep it running for practices. We had to play all away games for a couple seasons. Didn't get to host any. And then when we were able to host, we didn't have locker rooms, we didn't have concessions. We just basically played, and everything happened at the court, on the court. It was tough. It was tough on the kids. It was tough on the staff. It continues to kind of be felt everywhere, and but there's also like a whole sense of gratitude and appreciation for what we have now, because we know what it's like to not have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Woody, were you? I take it y'all weren't as heavily impacted, but still impacted.
We didn't lose, obviously, our school. I believe Dorian is the one that ripped off the roof to our gym, and we had some issues there, if I remember correctly, to the school building itself. Student-wise, if you live in the south area of Hatteras and Frisco, in the south end of Buxton, there was a lot of flooding. Typically, if Ocracoke floods, typically Hatteras Village and Frisco floods. Depending on the exact wind determines who gets it the worst. That year, Ocracoke won that battle. But
we'd rather take the loss on that.
Yeah. Those are the only ones you really want to lose. But for us, just being a person down here, I can't tell you. I mean, I've redone the inside of my parents' home down in Hatteras, I think 3 or 4 times since I've been an adult. And just knowing. Luckily for me, I bought a house in possibly the highest place in the Outer Banks. And so pretty safe from the flooding and stuff, but I constantly have to deal with it with my parents. Thank God their house got lifted last year, and so the county lifted their house, so we're not hopefully having to deal with that anymore, but I got to actually go over and help over there and with Dorian over in Ocracoke, so help pull out insulation and all that in the homes over there, and so it's really, really devastating. And you know what? It doesn't matter how long you live here; you never get used to that part of it.
No, yeah.
You go in and you're like, okay, it's another storm. You sit in your house and you're like, here it comes. You have days of anticipation. And but the aftermath, no matter how many times your house gets flooded, it just devastates you every time, even knowing that it's coming. And there's nothing you can do. So that probably is. It doesn't happen. What are we in 2004? So we're 6 years out from, or 5 years out from really the last bad one. But it's a constant thing, and luckily it's not an everyday thing we battle, but it is probably the most devastating thing, and it's hard to, even if it's not you, just seeing people that you know and that, your family and friends, and have to go through that, on a so many year basis, it feels like.
Well, that leads to another question of, a couple weeks ago, 60 Minutes had this piece on Smith Island in Maryland, and used to have like 800 people, and now they're down to 200. And the theory is that they're going to be the first climate change refugees in American history, that eventually the 200 will be zero because, and they're not even saying that long, 100, 150 years from now, it's just going to be totally uninhabitable. Is there discussion when you lived at Ocracoke, Mary, and Woody to Cape Hatteras, that, how much long we've been over here, our people, I know y'all have got the same 4 or 5 last names like we do here in Carteret County and in Ocracoke and Hatteras, and we've been here for hundreds of years, and we'll be here hundreds of years more, but as we have more storms, and you guys, the flooding is more prevalent, and is there a discussion about how long is this sustainable to have schools, to have kids, to actually live here? We can start with you, Mary.
Oh, sure. There's talk about everything in a small village. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a topic of conversation, and our commissioners and other people are talking about. We see it with like the erosion of our beaches, and then of course like our highway that leads to the north end where the ferry is. It's pretty much kind of constantly got water on it, and we're trying to push it back. And you're just fighting Mother Nature, who is going to win. She will win. So yeah. We see it. You see it, and it's one of those things where you think it'd be this like gradual change, but it does feel like it's less gradual as of the past decade or so. It seems to be a little bit more aggressive, and so we definitely see it, and we definitely feel the effects of it. And there's conversations about. I don't know the science behind it. Like, I'm not sure what the estimate is on how long we're going to be here, but it's such an incredible place. You kind of hope it sticks around for a long time, but who knows?
How about you, Woody?
I'm kind of on the same. I mean, it's kind of cool. I don't know if you guys know, but we're one of the last national parks that people live in. And so, I don't know how long. It's always been one of those things. If you live here, Mary will tell you, there's always this constant kind of like tension between, the locals and the Park Service. And, there are some good, some bad, on both sides of it, obviously. But, for us, it's kind of that idea of how much longer will the federal government allow it,
Right.
Because, we're looking at a thing where you're having to constantly rebuild dunes and all these different things. And,
right.
The highway is state maintained, but outside of each village, everything else is basically federally owned and, dealt with. And so, over the last, I graduated high school in 2002 here, and we had a massive Coast Guard base. And now anybody that comes for the Coast Guard, they find their own housing here, and they had all of that stuff. So it's, you can kind of see it dwindling in that aspect of people coming in from outside government stuff. The Park Service has dwindled down quite a bit here. It feels like to me, I could be wrong. But I think personally, the state of North Carolina and several other entities make quite a bit of money off of the land out here. So hopefully that'll keep us sustained out here for many years to come.
Yeah.
I'm hoping my kids can even raise their kids out here.
Well, we thought before we talked to you guys that you had probably the two most challenging and unique AD jobs in the state. And after talking to you, I think it's even...
You can't be anybody else.
I know the NCHSA gives the AD award to somebody in the state every year. I just think they should give it to you two every year, and we'd be set. Thank you, guys.
I do think about the schools that have like 3,000 students. That alone, I would I would crumble at the knees.
That presents its
That
own sort of
scares me.
challenges, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for spending time with us today. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.